Hey, welcome. If you've ever felt totally lost in the middle of a relationship crisis, you know how chaotic and overwhelming it can be. Well, today we're going to look at a completely different way to handle it. We're diving into Alina Chamberlain's work from She Who Awakens to show you how to transform that conflict from a battlefield into a clear, manageable project, one where you are in control. So let's just start with this one powerful idea. What if that gut-wrenching moment, that feeling that everything is just falling apart, what if it's not the end? What if it's actually an invitation, an opportunity to rebuild your relationship into something way stronger, way more mature than it ever was before? That's the mindset we're exploring today. And here's our game plan. First, we're going to cover the core philosophy, shifting from crisis to mastery. Then, we'll walk through a three-phase playbook, the diagnostic, the action plan, and something called the board meeting. And finally, we'll talk about that crucial last resort, knowing when it's time to call in an expert. All right, first up, from crisis to mastery. Look, before we get into any of the how-tos, we have to get our heads right. This is all about a total change in how you even look at the problem. It's about moving away from those messy emotional reactions and stepping into a calm, logical strategy. The ultimate goal here is what the source material calls an adult-to-adult partnership. You know what I'm talking about, right? It's about getting out of those frustrating parent-child loops, where maybe one person is pleading and the other is just shutting down. Instead, you're both showing up as equals, like two executives at a table, ready to solve a problem together. And this really gets to the heart of it. You stop seeing it as just this big emotional mess and start treating your relationship like a project, a really important project. And as the woman in the relationship, who is so often the one leading the emotional charge, this framework puts you right in the driver's seat as the project manager. Okay, so now let's get our hands dirty. Phase 1, the diagnostic. This is so important. You can't fix a problem if you don't really truly understand what's broken. This whole phase is about changing the actual dynamic of the conversation itself. Now, here is a massive piece of insight that explains why fighting in the heat of the moment almost never works. When a lot of men are under high emotional stress, their brain literally goes into fight or flight. That means the logical, problem-solving part of the brain pretty much just shuts down. Now, this isn't an excuse for bad behavior, not at all. It's a piece of strategic intelligence for you. It tells you that timing is everything. This right here, this is the most important shift you can possibly make. It's moving from me versus you, where you're enemies in a fight, to us versus the problem, where you're on the same team. It's about consciously deciding to ditch the emotional chaos and the blame game and step into a space of strategic clarity. This is the only place where real healing can actually start. Okay, so you've managed to calm the storm. You're both on the same side of the table now. What's next? Well, now it's time for phase 2, the action plan. This is where you turn all that talk and understanding into real, actual change. And the first rule of the action plan is critical: 48 hours. The source is incredibly clear about this. You have to take the very first concrete step in your new plan within 2 days. Why? It's all about creating a neurological reset. It's a powerful signal to both of your brains that says, hey, this time is different. It breaks the cycle before old habits can drag you right back in. So, how do you do it? Simple. First, you create the plan together when you're both calm. Talk about specifics. What exact behaviors need to change? What's our path out of this crisis? Second, and this part is totally non-negotiable, you write it down. A plan in your head is a fantasy. A written plan, that's a contract. And finally, you execute that first step within those 48 hours to get the ball rolling. You know, a brilliant plan means nothing if there's no follow-through. And that brings us to phase 3, the board meeting. This isn't about a one-and-done fix. It's about building a system to make sure these positive changes actually last. Think of it like a weekly relationship board meeting. Put it on the calendar, same time, same day, every single week. This is not a time to bring up old fights. It's a focused, strategic check-in. You're just there to ask what's working, what's not working, and what do we need to tweak for the week ahead. That's it. So why does this super structured approach work so well? Well, the idea is that for many men, this takes all that emotional chaos and turns it into a solvable problem with clear goals and metrics. It lets them feel competent and actually engaged in the process of fixing things. And for you? It creates a predictable, safe space for these talks, so you don't have to feel like you're managing the emotional temperature of the relationship 24/7. But what happens if you've tried all of this and you're just still stuck, hitting that same wall over and over again? That is when you move to our final step, calling in the arbitrator. And let me be clear, this is not a sign of failure. This is a smart, high-level executive decision. So who is this arbitrator? It's a neutral expert, a psychologist, a therapist, a couples counselor, someone who brings a proven system to the table. Their real magic is making the invisible threads visible. All those deep-rooted patterns that you two are just way too close to the situation to see on your own. And this quote right here is the secret to getting your partner on board. He might tune out what he sees as your opinions or advice from friends, but there is often a powerful, deep respect for real, authoritative expertise. When you frame it this way, not as complaining, but as consulting an expert strategist, it can change everything. And of course, choosing that expert is another strategic move. His willingness to really buy in might just depend on how much he respects their authority. So you gotta do your homework. Find someone with serious credentials, with glowing recommendations, someone who is clearly a master of their craft. It turns the whole thing from a chore into a high-level consultation. So we'll leave you with this thought. When you shift your mindset from pure emotional reaction to deliberate, strategic action, a crisis can truly become a catalyst for incredible growth. It's no longer about winning an argument. It's about successfully managing a project together. So the only question left is, what's your next strategic move going to be?